Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Primrose ZJ Bima. I have a PhD in Political Studies, a Master's in International Relations, Honors in Gender and Transformation, and a Bachelor's in which I majored in International Relations, Public Administration, as well as Gender Studies. Quite a mouthful. You will soon realize why I decided to give such an intro. So the title of this video is What is the Value of My Social Science Degrees? By extension, this could also be a discussion around what is the value of social science degrees. So I come from a university space where I studied within a faculty of humanities where we've got Bachelor of Arts programs as well as Bachelor of Social Science programs, and by extension, Master of Arts and Master of Social Science, and obviously PhDs, named quite differently. But my PhD is in a field that is a social science. So I think that there is a popular perception that social sciences are weak sciences. They have to do with human lives, human experience, thinking about policy making, the impact of policies, and various forms of decision making, whether in government, international organizations, within communities, within religious sections, and so forth. However, we cannot thrive within a society or a world where we do not have social science critical thinking, where we don't have social science inquiry. So based on that alone, I would say that social sciences are important and vital. And it has been through the lens of various fields in the social sciences that people have come to interrogate the ways in which we were living. For example, the colonial era, its capitalist effects, its racist effects, its classist effects, and so forth. And then when we speak about, for example, feminism, which is close to me because I am a gender specialist, it has helped us to continuously speak about the marginalization of persons that don't comply with heteronormative or heterosexual expectations. And we also think about ways in which we can have interventions that address the root causes of, for example, gender-based violence, of which it is patriarchy, right? And also thinking about new ways of living, thinking about new ways of speaking about toxic aspects of culture, for example. So it is relevant to have social sciences. So just in terms of my background, why did I choose to do a bachelor's and then majored in international relations, public admin, and gender studies? So I knew that I had a passion for international relations. I wanted to do work related to the United Nations and foreign policy analysis. So it's good that I was a teenager that knew what she wanted to do in university. I was advised that taking public administration would be very helpful because public administration is, of course, the major source of policy making, what governments do, what ministers in cabinet do, what members of parliament do in their interactions. So if I were to do international relations, it only made sense to do public administration. Now that is correct, but I think looking back, I should rather have taken something else that is quite different and divorced from policy making because already I knew my niche in terms of policy making. Not to undermine the impact of studying public policy and administration, because I learned a lot about policy making, and because, for example, international relations is about a state's interests and its exercise of its national interests in the global political economy. So it is an extension of public policy. So my third major was gender studies. It was something I was curious about because I always knew that I had something to say about the need to rethink our ways of living and challenging what we have normalized as culture, challenging the power dynamics we've normalized that have led to the subjugation of women, that have led to the violation of LGBTQ persons, and also that have led to a misunderstanding of what women empowerment or the quest for feminist objectives is, right? We are not seeking a world where we are trying to dethrone anyone or attack anyone because of their masculine privilege. What we're seeking is gender justice, social justice. So I wanted to know more about how I could do that. And I think this would then feed into how I was going to exercise my interest, of course, in international relations, because institutions of global government, such as the United Nations, for example, do have a branch on UN Women. They also touch on issues that affect population. So I was definitely on track. Now, there's only so much you can do with a degree. There's only so many majors you can do. And I think the University of Cape Town does offer the opportunity to do between 2 and 4 majors. You can't do one major in the Faculty of Humanities unless it was a specialized degree. So in hindsight, I think doing gender and doing international relations was very helpful. The public administration aspect, in hindsight, I wish I had replaced with a major that had a quantitative aspect. So, for example, economics or statistics, because I am realizing as I grow as a researcher and as a thinker that my critique of particular trends and particular issues also requires much engagement with statistical information that has to do with our demographics, that has to do with various societal challenges. And in many ways, when we look at issues and think about addressing challenges, there's numbers that come into play. Of course, the basic arithmetic can get you far, but I think an economics or statistical based appreciation of what is going on, what needs to change, and being part of that change would have really been helpful. What else could I have done? I think a foreign language. By foreign language, I mean another foreign language in addition to English. So I think the currency of engagement in international organizations is, of course, aided by the ability to speak more than just one international language. So I could have done French, which I had done in high school. I could have done Mandarin because the times we're living in sort of like demanded that in terms of international relations and Africa or African states foreign policy engagement in contemporary times. Now, I didn't do that, right? I've also seen benefit in how some people actually craft their international relations or politics majors along with a law backing. So some people do a postgraduate diploma in law or a postgraduate degree in law, like a real LLB for 3 to 4 or 5 years. However, because it wasn't really my area of interest, I have actually no regrets in that area. But I do think law is a good way of backing up a social science background. Some people actually do it from the get-go. So some people, when they're doing their Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Social Science, will do a BA Law, which means you're doing one major in the social sciences or the arts, and then law will also be your major. So you basically have 2 feet, like one in the law faculty, one in the humanities faculty. That's an option I think offered by the University of Cape Town as well. So now, when it came to choosing what to do during my honors, I think it was pushed too much by the narrative around you need to do what you know how to do best or what you've been getting the best marks in. So I ended up doing my honors in gender studies, not only because of that, but because I wanted to be comfortable with what I was going to be learning at that particular stage and to be able to earn marks that would catapult me to master's level. So it was a good year for me, healthy in the sense that I didn't have to push too much in terms of grappling with concepts, grappling with theory. I learned a lot more because at honors level, we were taught about research methods, which I think should be done at undergraduate level, but it's just not the case in the space that I was in for my undergraduate studies. So I found this to be a unique opportunity for me to engage with African feminist issues that have to do with the position of women in Africa in terms of economic marginalization and also in terms of the various forms of oppression they experience because of gender. So then I decided that no, for masters, I think I should do international relations because at the end of the day, that was like the love of my life, like still is. It was a passion that I had well established when I was younger, and I knew that's the route I wanted to go. And in the space that I was studying, there was not necessarily a master's in gender studies. There was a master's by research in gender studies, and I still felt that I wanted to do coursework. So my master's in international relations was by coursework and dissertation, which means that I took courses, I think about 5 courses, and then I also had to write a dissertation, which is about 25,000 words. So the benefit of doing that master's was that I had leeway to do a course in political journalism because it's something I was always curious about. But I think it was another lost opportunity for me to have done a quantitative based course. I don't think it was an offer at all anyway. And also now the option to add a language had shifted, because if I had done like an undergraduate course in languages, it would probably not have counted towards my GPA, and also it was going to be costly. So I think the incorporation of particular elements that are not offered by a degree should happen at a very early stage, whether as a side certificate or self-learning or diploma program, and then see what your master's offers and evaluate as you go, which is something that I didn't do. I was just so grateful that I was learning theory at an advanced level. And because I had struggled with theory during my undergraduate years, my major focus was on mastering theories and thinking about the concepts I wanted to incorporate as a foreign policy analyst, thinking about my niche, because remember, in gender studies, my interest was African women. And I also came to realize that in foreign policy analysis, I also had a particular interest on foreign policy, the exercise of foreign policy by African states, in particular towards each other. So, masters went well. It was a struggle. I cried. I wanted to quit at some point, but that's a story for another day. The fact that I finished means that it went well at the end of the day. So, the decision to take up a PhD in politics was quite strategic. First and foremost, I had grown a deeper interest in the ways in which government works, right? Apart from how they conduct themselves in the region, on the continent, and globally. So I decided on a topic that married diplomacy as well as democracy. So I was looking at regional peacemaking approaches to electoral violence. And so that means that I was looking at elements of democratic malaise, because electoral violence is a signal that the democratic trajectory of a country leaves a lot to be desired, and it needs to be checked, and intervention may be required from outside, which in turn is about what? The diplomatic efforts. And I had a clear frame of mind when I was going into it. My argument was, of course, that I was going to demonstrate the inefficacy of peacemaking approaches by a regional organization, in this case, the Southern African Development Community, and stated my case studies. In that case, they were Lesotho and Zimbabwe. So, yeah, I then realized that you can be a doctor of philosophy in politics and be a master of international relations and be this gender studies scholar and enthusiast. But this can be limiting. So I could teach in the areas that I have studied and offer real critique, train students on how to write critically, and engage with academic literature, engage with non-academic literature that is relevant. But there's something I kept realizing when I was looking at job descriptions, and I was like, I don't have a statistical background. And in as much as I'd done a course on data analysis in the field of political science, I think the focus was very limited. And also the way in which the course was taught, there was an innate assumption that we knew what we were doing. And trust me, if you did math in 2011 and you have to start doing math again in 2016, there's a big difference in what you knew back then and what you know now. So I think I'm in a space where I realize the need to reskill myself in terms of the quantitative aspect. And I've also taken a deeper liking into issues that have an economic aspect to them. So I do realize that I may need to be sharpening my skills in that area as well. Reading could help. I think listening to economists could be helpful, and also just keeping up to date with economic trends. But I still find myself thinking about what does it mean for me to think about finding a way of learning about these concepts and how to apply them, whether professionally in an organization or academically in terms of fusing them with the content that I teach. In terms of languages, I'm definitely thinking about resharpening or my orientation in terms of what I know. So, for example, going back to French, learning Swahili because it's very relevant on the African continent, and I don't know, any other language that I pick up along the way that I think would be relevant for any work that I'm doing. However, there's three realities. Number one, education is expensive, any form of education, and affordable avenues oftentimes are short term, or they don't give you the academic rigor you're supposed to be getting. So online courses, for example, that are short, I found some helpful, but the lack of engagement with someone that you can check in with every other day, I find that very problematic. And then in terms of university spaces, just thinking about trying to do another undergraduate or a master's or an honors or a postgrad diploma, that means I have to think about also the sacrifice of time as well as money. And then I think the third one is around you don't really know, right? So I've realized that sometimes courses are well advertised, even the names of the themes or the topics of the course are well advertised, but when you get into the actual course, you realize that you aren't getting as much as what you need. So I think thinking about ways of finding ways to self-teach, but also attaching that learning to projects. So even if it means doing an internship for a few months in an institution that applies particular principles or methods of data collection, data analysis, and whatnot, that hands-on approach will be helpful. Similarly, even if I do pick up a language, right, I need to be in spaces where I use it, I practice it daily. So I think that will also be valuable. Yeah, so what is the value of my social science degree? I don't know if I can put a monetary value to it, but I think that if I am to define myself as 100%, I think 50% of me is because of that. And I don't undervalue that 50%. It makes a lot. And I think that anything new that we have to learn as we go, particularly in terms of based on occupational or practice or work-based practice rather, I think that would definitely add about 40%. And then I think 10% should definitely come from continuously refining my skills. I now understand why they say that learning doesn't end. I understand why some people have more than 2 or 3 postgraduate programs. I understand why people pursue particular certificate programs. So it all makes sense. I also understand the value of interning or working for free even when you need to be like in full-time employment. It's not a privilege that many can exercise those. So it's also okay to say I can't immerse myself in a non-paid internship just because it's going to expose me to a particular institution. So this also means that I have to think about applying for fellowship programs, certificate programs, and I think that this is advice that anyone else needs. This is advice no one gave me. This is advice that is coming from within, having reflected on what I'm seeing in the world and having reflected on personal experience. So, yeah. And then I've got here the benefits of actually fusing a social science degree with, for example, skills in economics and statistics, or with languages, or with a low backing is that you have that multi-sectoral appeal. So even when you're applying for jobs, you can apply for jobs in more than just the sectors that you're currently applying to. And also when we're going to university, we think we know where we want to be, but sometimes those spaces may not be open for us for the very longest time. Excuse my English there. And then it's good to actually take up challenges. I don't think it's possible for me to die from pursuing an area that is not my strength. So in as much as we encourage mastering a field and becoming a doctor of philosophy in a field, I think it's also very important for us to also think about taking up a challenge in an area that is not your niche, in an area that is not necessarily your strength. Because remember, what your strength is now didn't come as like you were not born with it. I was not born an international relations expert, at least like from my knowledge. So I trained myself. I was socialized academically to like it. And in terms of how I expose myself to the news, to speeches by, people who are big in the game and all of that, I obviously become stronger. So in the same vein, one can take up a challenge in a different area and try and marry what you already have with the new content. And then I think it also helps, apart from the multisectoral appeal, you can easily pivot between government, NGOs, and also even if you start your own business, you are better skilled. So I find value, for example, right now as I run a business in using the accounting principles that I gained in high school. So I can only imagine what having an economics or finance background would be like with the current majors that I did. So it would help me, for example, to venture in the World Bank, into different international financial institutions, or even like national or continental ones like the African Development Bank and so forth. So I think that we need to think about having more diverse degrees in as much as we like to master and focus and have this niche approach to learning. And then secondly, we need to think about evergreen or contemporary hot industries. So I think the evergreen would include the importance of quantitative skills, for example. I cannot understate that. And then we've seen that, for example, multimedia skills matter in the new age. Even if you want to be a communications consultant or a project manager, they want people that can do photography, videography, and not just that, but like the editing aspects to it, use of social media, even if you're a reserved person. So also just thinking about how do I curate my content on social media so that when I want to demonstrate that I'm actually capable of developing content that is relevant, people will be like, yeah, we've seen her work already, even without a portfolio. So also thinking about how to reshape yourself, your career identity, and even that's just the individual identity according to contemporarily relevant areas. So I think that's it from my end. Please, in the comments box, let me know how you feel about what I've said today, and also let me know if you've got any ways or any strategies that you've come up with or that you're thinking about that could help you, particularly if you've got a social science or arts-based degree, in terms of fitting into the world of work and just fitting into the globalized economy, and also just fitting into this area of what people that have degrees or people that have graduated are doing. So I want to wrap up by emphasizing that social sciences are not useless. They should just be ways of navigating the world as it is, and also appreciating the need to link what you have with what you do not have and may actually need, because at the end of the day, we're also trying to do work that has a social appeal or a society-based appeal. So if your skills currently have not equipped you to deal with social problems effectively, then do find ways in which you can actually do that. So that postgrad diploma in business that you've been thinking about, that postgrad certificate in education that you've been thinking about, the ideas you've been having about thinking and learning about coding could actually be the next right step in the right direction. I wish you all the best. See you in the next one. Bye.